There's often so much going on in the messy middle of a relationship breakdown that it can seem impossible or even poor form to focus on money management, even like you're doing something wrong or focusing on the wrong areas. There's lots of people with lots of judgments. So tonight, I really wanted to convince you that it is the messy middle, or even earlier if you can, where you need to bring money management to the forefront. It really does need to be a priority if you want to move forward and create a life you love, regardless of the current situation that you're in. So I invite you to consider it through a bit of a different perspective. Control what you can control, but don't lose focus on what else is important. Money isn't everything, but it is a really good lever for a good life. Consider the situation an opportunity to build a new life, and one for the moment where you don't have to negotiate with anyone. The choices are yours and yours alone. Knowing that making an effort and impact on your money management skills now will set the foundation for your future. And remember, everyone's watching, particularly your kids. You're setting a real example for them and the people around you, even if you don't realise it. But relationship breakdown is tough. All we can do is the best that you can while being realistic and kind to yourself. So, oh my God, what am I going to do? When you first go into the situation of relationship breakdown and realizing that you're going to be completely responsible for an entire budget, paying all the bills, looking after your kids if you've got them, mortgages, rent, it can be overwhelming. And it doesn't matter if it's your choice to exit a relationship or the other person's decision that forces your hand, the reality is the same. You do need to take control and find a way forward to manage your life and your money. Now is not the time to bury your head in the sand. And I know that other girls would be able to share stories, but I've had clients who are struggling years after separation and divorce because they sat back and I think they were unintentionally waiting for someone to come and save them or something to change. They didn't feel like they could be proactive and take the reins and make some better decisions. But as soon as they did, they were certainly able to make some changes. So it is possible. I had been married for over a decade with my partner close to 20 years when I found myself looking down the barrel of divorce and being a single parent to 2 boys. I don't pretend it's easy and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but if it does happen, please know that with the education effort, you can find a way forward. So let's start. Step 1. Now, I'm not going to be popular with this because it's not fun and it's not exciting, but it is necessary. You have to understand your expenses. So make yourself a cuppa, grab yourself a glass of wine, open your spreadsheet, or if you're a handwriting person, grab your notebook, your online banking or your shoebox of receipts, and we're going to make a master list of every single expense. But I want you to record the regular expense amount and the annual expense amount. So for example, on groceries, it's $300 a week on food or $15,600 per year. Jot them down in 2 columns. It'll save you some time later. I promise you the hour or 2 that this will take will return itself in spades of value as you move forward. And I want you to just record the list. Don't think about it or judge it. Just get down every single expense you have. Food, insurance, after school care, those school shoes you buy once a year, your income protection, annual bank fees, every item. Don't give up until you've got every single one down. And if you need a hand, reach out and I'm sure we can share our master list to help you try and find the ones that you've forgotten. Now, as soon as you've completed that list, add up the annual expense figures. And if you're spending 100K and earning 80, it's easy to see that something needs to change. So grab a highlighter, use the one in Excel, highlight everything that can be removed or reduced, rinse and repeat until you get your annual spend where it needs to be. Now, I didn't say I was going to be popular. I didn't say it would be easy. I did say it would be worth it. You're going to have some tough decisions to make. If you're moving to a single income after having a dual income, things will need to change. But making those decisions in advance is going to give you the control that you need to start making the bigger decisions about your financial future. Now, expenses are just the starting point, and just because you manage to whittle your expenses down to less than you earn doesn't mean you're going to have the cash available when you need it. That's when a spending plan comes in. But this is the essential first step. And when you get to Friday, that's when you'll find out more. So step 2, Carolyn talked today about making wise decisions, not emotional ones. And I urge you to remember that. So no matter what you're feeling in this time, you need to be logical, pragmatic, and focused. Carolyn also covered how to make a plan for uncomplicating your money. So please go back and listen if you need a refresh. Taking action in your bank account setup is honestly the first step to cash flow control. It's gold. So a quick recap is that you need to set up your bank accounts in such a way to effectively put a fence around each pool of money. So your first account was your predictable bills account for your everyday expenses. Your second account was your weekly living or triple FI account for food, fun, fuel, and incidentals. And your third account was your emergency savings account or life happens account. This is the one I really want to talk to you about. As somebody with a single income, there are two areas we really need to focus on. The emergency savings or life happens accounts. When we work with clients, honestly, everyone is completely different. Some people feel comfortable with 3 months living expenses saved. Some require 6 or 12 months. It'll depend entirely upon your situation and your personal expenses. I strongly recommend, though, that you double whatever you would have felt comfortable with in this account previously, or at least set yourself a savings goal to get there, no matter how unachievable that may seem in this moment. For me, I had 12 months living expenses available for emergencies. That provides a significant buffer if I was to lose my job, be unable to work for any reason, say if one of my children became unwell, or if I had a major repair required for my home. Seriously, this number needs to be higher than you think. I've done a lot of reading, and for singles, the most commonly suggested figure across all that reading over the last 4 years is that 18 months of expenses is what's required. So have a think. What is that number for you, and how could you get there? In the meantime, is there another contingency plan that you could put in place? What will you do if you experience an emergency before you have this money saved? The second thing we can do here is use buffers. So when you create a spending plan, you're going to have the option of listing a buffer, the minimum amount you like your account to be. When we have dual incomes and more flexibility, I'd usually recommend we keep the buffer minimal to ensure we're making every dollar work for you by paying down debt and in any other way we can. However, when you're on a single income, I suggest you consider doubling the buffers on all those accounts as well. Perhaps your triple FI account always has $100 as a minimum balance instead of $0. Maybe your predictable bills account has a $3,000 buffer. Once again, it's completely dependent on your situation, but creating a solid buffer is imperative so that when something goes wrong or life happens, you have as much flexibility as possible. And while we're here, I encourage you to talk to your insurance advisors. Ensure you have appropriate income protection insurance, that your assets are well covered, like your house and car. And if necessary, look at your TPD and death insurance. Maybe you want to ensure your children are looked after if the worst happens. Now that you're responsible and you're in charge for your financial future, it's time to think a little bit bigger than you may have previously. So that leads us on to our long-term savings and legacy. So when you need to make every dollar count, it can seem a stretch too far to save for the long term. On the other hand, it could take you longer to reach your goals, so that makes it even more important to start early and be committed. If you want that house deposit, that renovation, car, fridge, contribution to weddings, help out with first cars for your children, or even a private education, the time to start is probably yesterday, not 3 months out from when you need the money. Every dollar counts, every day counts, and if you plan now, you won't have to borrow. This is a values-based area though, so you do need to sit down and work out what's really important to you and make a plan for how much you need to save if you start now and start putting that money aside. It'll make everything seem so much more possible. If it is important for you to take care of your children if the worst happens and you don't have assets to pass to them, you do need to look at TPD and death insurances. Talk to a financial advisor so you can at least understand these implications and plan your legacy. If you want to, this is all about choice, and knowledge is power. Child support and expense management. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. Child support and shared expenses is one of the trickier areas you'll have to negotiate with ex-partners. It's emotional, it can be used as a way to control, and if your money management isn't in order, it can be financially stressful for both parties, which can bring about some not great behaviour. But since you've already taken action and written down every single expense from our chat earlier, you'll be in a good place to understand the expenses that are allocated to your children. So in my situation, my ex-partner and I looked to understand those expenses. We divided them in half and contribute weekly to a joint account where all bills are paid from. Now, that's a great option for people who have 50-50 custody, a good relationship, similar incomes and assets, and when no child support payment is required. You have to make it work for your situation. Equally, if you receive child support, you need to be very conscious of what you will do if that figure changes substantially. If somebody was to lose their job, take a pay cut. I know I had a client of mine who was quite reliant on the income provided from their ex-partner. That ex-partner stopped doing fly-in, fly-out work. The income dropped by 70%. Child support was now no longer part of the equation. They had to move homes. There was massive upheaval, and it was really not a good situation. So being aware of what can change is just as important as planning for what you know is going to be true. Awareness is key. I guess on the other side of it, if you're the person paying child support, it can be very hard if a substantial payment needs to be made for you to live the same way you were used to. These are hard decisions to be made, but they're yours. Take control, make the best decision you can, and keep moving. For me, that meant I had to take on some additional consulting work. That was purely for my long-term savings. Others choose to live more simply or downsize. Living within your means while planning for the life you want is key. Don't get into debt trying to keep up with the Joneses. If you receive lump sum settlements, this has happened 3 of my clients in the last 2 years. They've felt that that was a good time to reward themselves for the hard work that they've been doing. Don't make emotional decisions or short-term ones like rewarding yourself with those holidays. Since you've been through a lot, if the honest truth is that the money should be set aside for future expenses you have no other way of paying. It's not a reward if it's going to bite you in the butt later on. Look, adulting is not always fun, and making some of these decisions may not give you short-term rewards, but you can reach a balance if you plan and ensure you move towards financial security and comfort, rather than debt and working well past your retirement goals. So what you do now matters. Before I close off though, Caroline, if you'd like to come back and the other ladies would like to come back online, I thought we've had lots of clients between us and maybe we could share a few stories about what impacts single people the most. So mine was the fly-in, fly-out worker. I think if I think back to all my clients, it was that one where her income went from basically her main income was her child support and then there was nothing. That was a really tricky situation. Anything, Carol? I remember you talking about an insurance, somebody who was uninsured.
Oh, yes, actually, when you said about insurance, I thought, oh my goodness, insurance is just one of those things that is so often neglected and so very, very, very necessary. And yes, I did have a client one day. She was actually a young girl that I worked with, and she got a phone call one day at work to say that her house, there was smoke coming out of the roof of her house, and they called the fire brigade. The neighbour called the fire brigade. She went into an absolute panic, couldn't even, she just burst into tears. She had four little kids under 10. And so I said to her, quick, get in the car, we'll go down. We're driving down the main road toward her home. And I said to her, just by the way, do you have house insurance? And she said, no, we're renting. And I said, do you have contents insurance? And she went, no. Why? And I said, because your house is on fire. And when we got there, thankfully, and at which point she just burst into tears, of course. When we got there, thankfully, the house was filled with smoke. It wasn't filled with fire, which was a wonderful thing. And so everything was okay. But in the course of that conversation, I said to her, why do you not have contents insurance? Everything in this home, you have 6 people live in this home, and everything in this home belongs to you. And if it burnt down, you would have nothing. And she said, we can't afford contents insurance. And I just said to her, you can't not afford contents insurance. And so many of my clients that I work with, when I do their initial spending plan and we do the top 12 transactions, and one of those ones that we talk about is insurance, so many of them don't have insurance. I'm like, you cannot not have insurance.
And it shouldn't be the way, but if you're single, everything's just twice as hard, right? There's no one, you know, you can't stay at home and look after everything while someone else goes and helps pay back the money. It's an income protection insurance. I found a lot of single people put that as the thing they can't afford. What are you going to do without an income? If you're injured at work to the point that you can't work again till you're 65 and you have 2 or 3 kids at home, it's not going to be a good life. If you're living on a pension, it's going to be really tough. So insurance is worthy of a consideration. And I think it's really important. None of us sell insurance. So it's a really honest conversation. It's that's something you would talk to your financial planner about, but it's something that we see impacts people significantly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Marlene, Kim, have you had any clients who've had, you know, specific issues being single with that fly in, fly out issue that I've had?
No, I've had clients who are single mums, and one in particular lost her job partway through working with me, and she had quite a bit of credit card debt as well. And interestingly, she said to me, without her spending plan, she would have been lost, because she did receive a redundancy payment, and she said because she had the spending plan, she could see into the future how long that money would last before it would be panic stations about getting a job. And because she was trying to establish her own business, she was really excited because she could see that she had 6 months to get her business income up to the level she needed. And yeah, she said the peace of mind around that was just immeasurable. Yeah.
I love that. See, that's the power of it. And I think the other way too. So another client of mine had her kids hitting that 17, 18, 19, you know, throughout the next 3 years. So we could plan in her child support cutting off at those, you know, when they aged out. So we had a really good look at, you know, what we could afford to pay as a mortgage, knowing that those payments were going. And there's no other way to do that. Like, it's just, it really is quite special what we can do.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing too that just struck me on the child support thing, it just struck me the other day when a client rang in an absolute panic because they'd just had their tax done. So, and they have to put in, you know, the husband's predicted income for the next 12 months, right, for that payment. And they realised that his income had gone over by $45 a week, and she lost $15,000 in benefits because his income had increased by $45 a week. And she was in an absolute panic because she said, we're now on the breadline, what do we do? And I said, well, what you do is you go back to the spending plan and we look at how we can actually deal with that, you know. And we have managed pretty much to get her, she was really quite surprised. But the other thing that it did for her was, because she has like a little hobby business on the side, and she said, well, now I just need to sell more plants. And I said, yeah, you do. And she said, okay, so how much do I have to earn a week to do that? And so, and all of a sudden her whole demeanor changed. And it's moving people from that mentality too of receiving government payments to actually being self-sufficient, you know. And that changes your whole mindset. And we've talked a lot in the last couple of days about mindset. You know, Kim talked about it the other day, I talked about it today. And it's really important, and to get away from that and to get to the point where you can be self-sufficient. You can have, as you said, that buffer of savings in there, so that if anything does happen, you know that it's going to be okay. You know that you can see that, well, we've got 3 months or 6 months or 12 months or whatever, but we've got that buffer in place. And that's where we want to get our clients to. That's what we try to achieve for them.
Exactly. Yeah. I had a couple of clients last year who were in the early stages of business, and they were able to qualify for JobKeeper payments. which for one of them in particular was actually more than she was earning from the business prior to the pandemic. And she said in other circumstances, she probably would have thought, oh, yippee, and gone on a spending spree. But because she had her spending plan again, she was able to put money aside during the period that she received JobKeeper, and that then gave her a buffer for when the JobKeeper payments finished, and helped, you know, keep her business afloat. Yeah.
So true. And I think we've been talking tonight in the context of relationship breakdown, but this is just as, everything here is just as relevant for people who lose income through COVID. Like, how many people would be sitting there, you know, having moved from a double income to 1.5 or 1 or part of that over the last 12 months? I mean, everybody's been impacted differently. We're seeing Sydney and Melbourne, I know, even more so now, but there's no crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen up here. Having those balances and buffers and contingency plans is just clever thinking, so you don't get caught at the end.
Yeah, it certainly is. And my own daughter, I'll have to admit, was very reluctant about putting together a spending plan for her and her family. And it was COVID and the impact on their business that finally convinced her, yes, this is something I need. And she said to me the other day, oh, Mum, I just don't know why we didn't do this sooner. And I said, well, I tried. I tried for 15 years or more.
Your family are always the last ones to
Oh,
listen.
they are.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, I've been using the software probably not as long as you, Marlene, but prior to becoming a spending planner, I was already using the software and using it really well for 3 or 4 years before I was in the situation of moving back to a single budget or single income budget. But I've got to say, without it, even with that 3 years experience of using the software, I would have been in dire straits. It would have been really tricky and challenging to rework an entire budget from a couple or a family down to a single budget without a really structured approach. It's not simple. So that's why I wanted to talk about this. And Carolyn knows that I'm a little bit passionate about this too, because it is possible. It just takes a little bit of effort. And I know it sounds like it's not a lot of fun, and it's not in the beginning, but you know, a year or two later, everything's good again, and you're starting to get back on track and have some control. So I guess just to tell everybody, you've started a challenge. You signed up, you've listened to the first 3 sessions now. What are you willing to do? What actions are you going to take right now to make a positive change? So let us know in the Facebook chat page. We would love to hear your commitment. Everyone you see here would be your greatest cheerleader. We want for you what you can have through a spending plan. We know what you can achieve, and we can't wait to help you get there. So, of course, we have Marlene tomorrow talking to us about women's entrepreneurs and how you can be successful in business. And then, of course, our final day where you learn the power of a spending plan, which we got to share a little bit of just now as well. So stay the course. You'll thank yourself for it. Thank you for joining us tonight. Take care and stay safe, everybody.